You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheap again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Naruto Enters Kamen Rider? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Juubi no Shinju on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Tsukino residence. I'm home. Usagi called out as she stepped through the front door. She took off her shoes as her mother, Ikuko Tsukino, stepped out of the kitchen, approaching her with a kind smile. Welcome home, Usagi. She greeted her daughter. Usagi returned the smile with an uneasy one. Hi Ka-san. She muttered, feeling nervous. Maybe she won't ask about my grade. Yeah. She probably doesn't even know. You know. Ikuko started, still smiling her appealing smile. While I was out shopping earlier today, I ran into your classmate Yumino. Usagi blinked in surprise, an ominous tightness forming in her stomach. He said your class got their practice exam scores back today. Ayaha. In her head, a chibi Usagi screamed in shock and panic. No. Please, don't. She begged, hoping what she thought was about to happen didn't. He said he got a 95. Can you believe it? His parents must be so proud. Ikuko said, still smiling. Usagi began to sweat, as she chuckled nervously. Hee, yeah. Good for him. I'll get you for this Yumino. She mentally shouted in anger, just imagining Yumino's grinning face. He even said Naruto got a high score too. I'm surprised. That boy isn't really known for studying. Kushina must be ecstatic. Usagi continued to chuckle, sweating harder. Yeah, well, you know Kushina Basin. Ikuko giggled, nodding. Yeah, Kushina always hated studying too when she was his age. Guess being a mother really changed her. She said fondly, recalling her school days with the red-haired woman and how Kushina was always the rebel. Skipping classes, pulling pranks, and getting into fights. Now look at her. She sure has changed a lot. Well, she graduated and doesn't pull pranks anymore. Still gets into fights though. Ikuko thought, sweat dropping. Kushina was still the easily angered and rough woman she has been during their younger years, and she doubted she will ever stop being who she is. Shaking her head to leave memory lane, Ikuko looked at her daughter. What about you, Usagi? What did you score? She asked curiously. Ugh. The girl sounded, looking like she ate something sour. Can I see it? Her mother asked, holding her hand out. Okay. Silently, while keeping her head down, she took out her graded paper and held it out to her mother, who took it happily. Dropping her head, Ikuko's bangs covered her eyes, as her shoulders began to shake. Usagi. The woman said slowly, her tone holding rising anger. Said girl shook in fear, ducking her head down nervously. Yeah. Ikuko's head snapped upward, showing fire-filled eyes. She held up the paper into the air angrily. Stop bringing home grades like this. How long until you finally learn to study? She shouted at her daughter, who looked ready to cry. Thankfully, someone appeared to stop things before they could escalate any further. What's going on? Usagi's father, Kenji, asked as he entered the hall, having gotten home from work a while ago. Turning to him, still frowning, Ikuko passed him the graded test. Taking it, Kenji frowned, glancing at his pouting daughter. He sighed. Usagi. Usagi bowed low. I promise to study harder, To-san. She declared. Her parents glanced at one another before Ikuko sighed, rubbing her forehead. All right. She finally said, not wanting to get a headache yelling at her daughter after the long day she had cleaning the house. Dinner's almost ready. Just, go put your bag in your room. Nodding, Usagi moved past her parents to her room, sighing softly in relief at not getting yelled at by her mother anymore. With her parents, the violet-haired woman sighed deeply. I swear, what am I going to do with that girl? She asked, as her husband rubbed her back in comfort, just as the door opened and their young son, Shingo, entered, back from school. Up in her room, Usagi yawned as she put her bag down. She groaned as she rubbed her eyes sleepily. I'm too tired. She mumbled. Walking to her bed, she laid down with another yawn. I don't want to do my stupid homework. Maybe I'll take a quick nap. She muttered. Stretching her arm out, she grabbed an orange fox plushie, a past birthday gift from Naruto. Snuggling with the toy, she closed her eyes and was immediately out, drifting into a peaceful slumber. Meanwhile, outside her window, the black cat sat on her balcony, watching her through the glass. Naruto. Oma, Millennium. Naruto repeated, his tone full of shock and disbelief. This man, this monster, was him. He turned to the girl, Tsukuyumi, and shook his head, stepping back. Alright, I don't know what kind of prank you're pulling, but I'm not laughing. He stated, glaring at her. Seriously, he was supposed to believe that person, Oma Millennium, was him? From the future? Did this girl actually think he would fall for this? He may sometimes be dense about some stuff, but he wasn't stupid. Tsukuyumi shook her head, holding up her hands. I know this may seem strong to believe, but what I say is true. What? Naruto cut her off, glaring at her strong. You really expect me to believe you're from the future, ? He said, giving air quotes. That he points to the screen is me? I don't know where you got this crazy idea from, or how you found out about my dream last night, but I'm not falling for this. Tsukuyumi frowned. Dream? Has it started already? Please. She said, attempting to calm him down. I know what I say may seem crazy . May seem? Naruto asked, raising a brow at her. But everything I say is the truth. In the future, you obtain incredible power. Power of history's greatest heroes. The Kamen Riders and Super Sentai. The power you wield, will come to wield, that kind of power, the world feared and attempted to either take it from you or end you. In turn, you attacked back and destroyed more than half the planet's population. Obliterating any that stood in your way, as well as any possible threat to you. The world, in my time, has become a dystopian wasteland, where people live in fear as you rule with an iron fist. She told him, her tone heavy and serious. Naruto was quiet, shaking his head, but couldn't help but glance at the image of Oma Millennium every now and then. It's why I came back to this time. Information gathered said today was the day you first gained your power. The day you start your path to becoming Oma Millennium. I came back to this time to stop it from happening. And how were you planning on doing that? Naruto asked, glaring. By killing me? I've seen those American Terminator movies. Tsukuyumi frowned. She will not deny that that had been an option. However, I had hoped that by revealing to you your future, it will prevent you from becoming Oma Millennium. Fine then. Naruto stated, crossing his arms. If it'll put an end to this insanity, I won't become this Oma Millennium. Tsukuyumi shook her head. I'm afraid it's not that simple, Naruto-san. Why? My future's mine to make, isn't it? And whenever I make a promise, I always keep it. So, I promise I won't become this villainous demon king, no matter what. He said as if it was the simplest thing in the world. Tsukuyomi frowned. I'm afraid your future is out of your hands, Naruto-san. Trust me, I wish it was that simple, but when dealing with time travel, it never is. Naruto frowned, lowering his arms, staring at her. What do you mean, Databeo? Time can be a conscious thing. It controls us, not the other way around, as much as we wish we could. While I do not doubt your determination to your promises, there is no guarantee that while you might swear to not become Oma Millennium, that is not to say that somehow, someway, sometime in your future, events couldn't happen which could force you to take on the power that will lead to your ascension to becoming the Demon King. She explained. Naruto frowned deeper, leaning his head back against the metal wall. So, we're back to you killing me. He muttered, narrowing his eyes. He wasn't all that keen on dying. What would his family think? He couldn't exactly leave them a letter saying, sorry, had to die to make sure I don't grow up and destroy the world. Don't be sad. She sighed. Sadly, there is also no guarantee that another Oma Millennium might not rise from your death. This reason is why messing with time is forbidden. There is no telling what the consequences to small changes in the past could lead to. So, what now? Naruto asked. You're saying one way or another, either I become a demon lord that destroys half the world, or someone takes my place. He asked, letting out a heavy sigh. He had to be crazy to actually be believing this girl's words. Him. A demon king. A destroyer. It was just too crazy. But when living in a country where monster attacks had been the norm and colorful heroes saved the day, as well as the history of giant robots and giant monsters, one learned to have an open mind. Tsukuyomi nodded sadly. I'm afraid so. Trust me, I have been attempting to figure out a course of action that saves my timeline with no loss of life for anyone. Sadly, I'm more scared that any action I take could lead to the very thing I'm trying to prevent, or worse, mess things up even more. Naruto groaned, running a hand down his face as he pushed off the wall. I need some air. He said. Tsukuyomi frowned at him. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Naruto-san. In order to prevent your moment of ascension, I had to take you somewhere far. Naruto shook his head. I don't care where I am, I need air. Tsukuyomi held her frown, before reluctantly nodding. Moving to the hologram screen, she moved the video to the side and pressed some touch buttons. Soon, a part of the metal room he was in lowered, revealing light from the outside. Muttering a thanks, Naruto proceeded down the steps, going outside. Once out, he took a deep breath, taking in the refreshing air, his ears twitching as the sound of people reached him. He opened his eyes to observe his location, wondering where that girl took him and promptly froze. People moved around him, some carrying long sticks with hoisted bags. Others leading cows. The buildings around him were small and made out of wood and straws. The sky above was a clear blue. Naruto blinked as he stared at a family of chickens as they passed in front of him. One little chick turned its head towards him, letting out a soft chirp. Naruto blinked once. Twice. 3 times. Japan. Year, 1671. She was running. Why was she running? Where was she running to? She didn't even feel like she was running. It felt more like her body was moving on its own. Her vision was blurry. She couldn't see anything properly. She could hear something. But what? It sounded muffled. Multiple sounds. Multiple muffled sounds. What were they? People. Who were they? Someone was yelling, but she couldn't make out what they were saying. Flashes of light appeared in her vision, making her cringe. Yet she continued running. Her feet and legs seemingly moving without her command. She felt the ground shake under her feet. Still, she continued running. A sudden force threw her to the ground as the ground shook with greater intensity. However, she just got up and kept running. Where was she running to? Where was she going? Why did she feel a sense of panic? A gripping feeling in her chest? A sense to be somewhere, to get there as quickly as she could. The sounds of explosions and shouts occurred around her. What was going on? It sounded like a fight, but what fight had explosions? A movie? Was she in a movie? A dream maybe? Where was she? What was happening? The ground shook once more, causing her to trip, falling down with a wince. Groaning, she sat up, before her eyes widened, as, in her eyes' view, something massive appeared in the distance. She couldn't see what it was, but whatever it was, it let out a massive roar that caused her to cover her ears, clenching her eyes shut as the roar made her head feel like it was being hit with a sledgehammer. Make it stop. She pleaded. Even her thoughts were drowned by the monstrous roar. Ha! Everything was suddenly quiet and still. No more roaring. No more explosions. No more shouts. No more shaking. Just silence. A vast difference from what it was seconds ago. Cautiously, she slowly opened an eye, before she opened both, blinking. She was in a forest. Yeah. Wherever she was before, she was now in the middle of a forest. Where am I? Usagi asked, looking around with a confused and worried frown. Seriously, she was very confused. The last thing she remembered was lying on her bed to take a nap. Am I dreaming? She muttered, placing a finger on her chin, head tilting slightly sideways with a curious expression. She could be having a lucid dream. A very confusing lucid dream, but hey, that's how they worked, right? However the case on how she ended up there was, Usagi looked around the forest. It was strange, she felt an odd sense of calmness and peace at being in this place. As well as a strange feeling of nostalgia and déjà vu. As if she's been here before, but couldn't figure out why. As she glanced around, she noticed some strange-looking plants. At least she thought they were plants. One looked like a pink spiky spiral with a long end sticking to the ground holding it up. Another looked like a pumpkin on a stick. Cool, but strange. She began walking, as she had nothing else to do, all the while observing her surroundings. She noticed it was night time, with dozens of fireflies dancing around, much to her awe and happiness. She smiled at the appealing sight, watching the dancing lights. She felt so peaceful and calm, like all her troubles and worries just melted away. She would love to stay there forever, and not have to deal with school, or tests, or disappointed parents. This is paradise. She thought, closing her eyes to take a moment to soak in the peaceful feeling. Soon, she continued walking through the strange but appealing forest. Though, as she walked and enjoyed the scenery, Usagi couldn't help but feel as if she was being watched. Subtly glancing around, as best she could, which wasn't much, she tried to find the cause, yet had no such luck. She couldn't see anyone. Frowning a bit in worry, she hoped it was just her mind playing tricks on her, and kept walking. No destination in mind, just walking and enjoying the appealing scenery. If this really was a dream, she wanted to enjoy it while it lasted. Unknown to her, behind a tree, hidden in the shadows, a figure watched her. They had a small smile as they gazed at the teen. With Usagi, she continued to walk through the forest, not really having much to do, simply just looking at all the strange things she saw, from the weird-looking plants, to the strange vines that wrapped around the trees with weird-looking fruit hanging from said vines. She was tempted to reach out and grab one, but something told her that would be a bad idea. So, ignoring the strange fruit, she kept walking. Soon, she stepped into a wide-open field. However, while open, it was not empty, as she noticed something near the center. Tilting her head slightly to the side, she slowly approached the object. As she got closer, she realized that the object was a statue. Several in fact. Blinking, mouth agape, Usagi stared at the tall statues in front of her. They seemed to be grouped on two sides. The ones on the right were of people wearing armor. The ones on the left were actually of women, wearing outfits similar to Sailor V. Though, their faces were blank, completely smooth of any features like mannequins. The only reason she knew they were female was their curvy bodies. They all seemed to stand in poses of different kinds. As she looked at the statues, the two in the front middle caught her eye. They stood side to side, nearly back to back in poses with how they were angled. The armored one aiming a finger gun straight ahead, while the woman beside them had one arm across her chest aimed to the side in a V-arc, while the other arm held over the elbow, also pointing ahead. The two stood together on top of a pedestal, with a plaque under them. Looking at the plaque, she leaned closer to see its descriptions better. Monument dedicated to the warriors of justice and light. Heroes who bravely fight the darkness for the innocent. Lead by the brave knight of the sun and pretty maiden of the moon. Usagi frowned at seeing some of the text seemed like they were scratched out, becoming unreadable. She blinked at the last line. Knight of the sun. Maiden of the moon. She muttered, tilting her head to the side. What is this? A small preview of what is to come. The sudden voice made Usagi jump with a yelp. Turning around, she spotted a figure approaching her. Huh? She muttered, staring at them. They wore a long white kimono with a black sash and black pants with black sandals. She couldn't see their face, covered by darkness, even under the light of the moon above, yet from their voice, the person sounded like a man. Who are you? She asked nervously at the sudden appearance of a stranger. The man took a step towards her, in turn making her step back. She continued to back away as the stranger kept approaching her. She began to panic as her back hit the statue. She looked around for a way out, but it was too late as the stranger got inches away from her. She watched as he raised his arm up towards her, and clenched her eyes shut, expecting an attack. Instead of pain, she felt a warm sensation on the top of her head. Opening her eyes, she looked up and saw a smile on the man's visible lower face aimed down at her, as he softly rubbed the top of her head as if she was a young child. Being this close, she noticed how tall the man was compared to her, her head only reaching his shoulders. Who are you? She asked again, this time her voice soft, as the head rub made her feel weird, but also warm, her cheeks turning red. The man continued to smile at her, even chuckling softly. I am simply an old soul, happy to see a young one, full of life and happiness. As all young ones should be. He said, pulling his arm away, making Usagi pout lightly at the warm feeling vanishing, making the man chuckle in amusement. Hey! I'm not that young. I'm 15 years old. That means I'm a teenager. Meaning I'm almost an adult. She stated, hands on her hips in an attempt to make her seem mature, ruined by her puffed-out cheeks, which only served to make the man laugh. Usagi huffed in annoyance, before blinking, recalling what the man said. Old? He didn't seem that old to her. While she couldn't see his face, his voice didn't sound dusty and weaselly like she would hear from her grandparents. Maybe he was talking metaphorically. Yeah, she knew what that word meant. No matter what Naruto said. The man chuckled. I apologize, I have no intention of mocking your maturity, and I have no doubt you will grow to bloom into a appealing and majestic woman. The man said, making Usagi feel better as she smiled widely, cheeks red. The man looked at the statues. Tell me. Do you know what these statues represent? Usagi blinked at him, before looking at the statues as well. Represent? She asked, tilting her head. Heroes? She asked more than said. The people did look like posing superheroes to her, and the statue can have been made in their honor. The man chuckled, making her frown, thinking she was wrong. However, the man nodded. You are not wrong, for these statues are built to symbolize the heroes they portray. However, it is more than that. These statues stand to symbolize brave warriors, men and women who stand for those weak and afraid. Heroes who fight not for fortune and fame, but for justice and helping those in need. Heroes who stand to represent the light of goodness, and the courage anyone could achieve, no matter who they are. He said, his voice so strong, that it froze Usagi on the spot, her attention fully on him, listening to his every word. Still, their presence here has much more meaning than even that. Like what? Usagi couldn't help but ask. Once more, the man smiled at her, and for some reason, his smile made her insides warm, her heart beating fast. They represent the future. Of the rise of heroes, in times of when the darkness grows and combats the light. Of how ordinary people can find the courage inside of them to become the heroes they have hidden deep within them. Wow! Usagi muttered, staring at the statues in awe. These guys must be incredible. She gushed, wishing she could be like them. Someone with a hero hidden deep inside them. Did she have a hero inside her? With eyes full of awe, she imagined herself dressed like Sailor V and fighting bad guys, being all brave and heroic. Being someone who didn't cry all the time. A hero her parents would be proud of. The man smirked. They will be. He said, getting a confused look. What do you mean? He turned to her. The people these statues are modeled after, have yet to become the heroes they are meant to be. But in time, they will rise to combat the evil that threatens not only their world but also their time. Usagi cringed her eyes, frowning. I'm confused. She moaned, rubbing the back of her head, a tic she got from Naruto whenever he got confused about something. The man chuckled, raising a hand, and placing it on top of her head. You will understand in time, Usagi. And when you do, you will become the maiden of light that shall lead your world to peace and push away the darkness. Hey! She exclaimed, looking at him. How do you know my name? She asked, knowing she hadn't told him. The man smirked at her, rubbing her head. You will come to understand my words eventually. For now, you have a cat to meet, and a journey to start. However, before you go, remember this, to accept power, means to accept the responsibilities being given to you, but no matter the power, it means nothing if you don't have someone precious to protect. For it is only when you have someone precious, that you truly gain strength. He said, before Usagi could say anything, she vanished in a flash of light, leaving the man standing in the field. Said man turned back to the statues, staring at the armored figure and posing woman before him. Time is such a tricky thing. So many ripples made. So many new roads formed. So many indecisive conclusions. What path will you take, Usagi Tsukino? Naruto Namikaze? He asked seemingly no one, as the plaque began to change. Monument of Naruto Namikaze and Usagi Tsukino's first henshin. Will it be one of Heroes of Light? He asked, turning around, and began to walk away. As he walked, the environment began to change. The trees began to disappear, replaced with a deserted landscape, while the moon above turned to form an eclipse, the black void looming above all below. The statues also changed. Gone were a group of armored heroes and poised maidens, and in their place, stood a single, imposing figure. Monument of the King of Time and Space. Naruto Namikaze, Oma Millennium. Rejoice the ultimate, the supreme, the unparalleled all-powerful king. Or one of villains of darkness. He muttered before he vanished. City. Come on, forehead. Move faster. Ino. Slow down, would you? The sun has just started to begin its setting, the sky taking on a pinkish color, as moving at a fast pace, one Ino Yamanaka was currently pulling her best friend by the arm, as the blonde teen moved quickly through the small crowd of people walking on the sidewalk. Sakura groaned as she tried to keep up with Ino, her arm being pulled until it felt painful. Ino. You're going to tear my arm off. Can't you slow down? No time. Ino responded, keeping her eyes dead ahead. She cursed the fact that she wasted so much time doing her stupid homework, and only found out about the sale happening in a nearby jewelry store at the last minute. So naturally, she grabbed Sakura, who she was doing homework with at her house, before rushing out the door. With her father at work, and her mother attending the family flower shop, she was forced to go on foot. Please, let there be something left. She prayed. She would be devastated if she missed out on some fabulous jewelry. Sakura groaned as she pressed down on her shoulder in an attempt to keep it from popping out. She cursed Ino and her obsession with pretty things. Sure, she loved jewelry as much as any girl, but not to the extent of pulling your best friend's arm so rough it pops out. She could only pray they got to the store before that happened. To their happiness, for different reasons, the two girls saw the store jewelry OSAP ahead. To Sakura's immense relief, Ino finally released her arm, running ahead, with the pink-haired girl following, rubbing her shoulder to make sure it was all right. With a digital chime, the sliding doors opened as Ino stepped inside with a wide excited smile. Said smile lessened when she noticed how many women were already there, going around the store. It's so packed. Is there even anything left? Welcome. Naru greeted, sitting by the entrance behind a work desk, seeing the new customers entering, with Sakura entering a second after Ino. Seeing the look on Ino's face, Naru gave her a sad smile. Yeah, I'm afraid a lot of our highest quality Jews have been sold. I think we might still have some left, along with regular, but no less appealing stuff, if you're interested. Nodding, Ino thanked Naru, before moving to look at the jewelry with Sakura. Smiling, Naru returned to doing her homework. She had stayed to help her mother sell, as, with the sale, the place got really busy. Speaking of her mother, she hasn't seen her in the past hour. With a frown, she wondered where she was. He. Mrs. Osaka chuckled as she stood inside a dark room, with the only light source being a glowing orb held in her hands, encasing the demonic expression on her face in an ominous pinkish shine. So much greed. So much energy. This will surely please Queen Beryl. The creature in disguise muttered. Such pathetic humans, but such good sources of energy to drain from. Won't be long until they are nothing but husks. Jadeite, who stood in an unknown location, also felt the rising amount of negative energy being drained from the victims and smirked. Yes, not long now. He said, glad that his plan was coming to fruition. He wondered if the distraction he requested was met. City, outdoor food plaza. Azuka moaned happily, a wide smile on her face with her mouth and chin being a complete mess of cream. Ice cream. Ice cream. I love ice cream. She sang happily, her feet kicking the air as she sat on a bench in the small town clearing, a couple of food stands near her. Sitting beside her, Yuriko Murakami chuckled lightly, nodding as she agreed with her young sister in all but BLD. She took a lick of her own ice cream cone, hers being chocolate, while the small redhead had vanilla. The two were enjoying their small relaxation stop before they had to head home before they worried Naruto with being late to dinner. Also before his ice cream melts. Yuriko thought, glancing at the vanilla ice cream in a cup she had in her other hand. We should definitely come back here with Oniai-chan, Kaa-san, and Tu-san. Azuka stated happily. Yuriko smiled at her. That's a great idea, Azu-chan. I'm sure they'll love it. She said, licking off the last of her treat, before eating the waffle cone. She looked at Azuka, who finished her own. Ready to head home? She asked, getting an overly happy nod. Giggling at how happy the girl always seemed to be, Yuriko's smile grew. She hoped she always stayed the happy girl she was. It happened so suddenly. 1 second, the plaza was filled with the happy voices of the people within it. The next. Boom. People screamed as the ground began to erupt in explosions. Like ants when an anthill is disturbed, people scattered in various directions, trying to escape and get to safety, away from whatever danger there was. Yuriko and Azuka gasped as the nearest explosion caused them to fall to the ground from the force. Azuka groaned, rubbing her head as she sat up. "What was that, Databane?" she muttered. Opening her eyes, she gasped, frowning when she saw the ice cream that was for her brother on the floor, spilled over. "Oni-chan's ice cream." She muttered sadly before she gasped as Yuriko picked her up and began moving out of the area quickly. Yuriko didn't know what was going on, but one thing's for sure, she had to get Azuka to safety. However, before she could get far, someone appeared before her. Something. Yuriko gasped as she stopped in her tracks, taking a step back as she stared at the creature before her. It was humanoid, light violet and black rough skin, and a dragon-like face. "Sorry, but no one is leaving this place," the monster stated, raising its clawed hands up menacingly. Just then, numerous men dressed in black armored clothing and black masks leaped into the scene, blocking any attempts of escaping and surrounding the captured. People gasped and shook as they backed away in fear, as did Yuriko, who held the whimpering Azuka. All the while, the monster laughed. "That's right. Tremble in fear. Soon the whole world shall tremble with the rebirth of Shocker. Ah! Almost time for my lord's coronation." Standing on a high bridge, the man dressed in dark clothing Naruto ran into earlier that day smirked as he gazed up at the sky, watching the sun lower. Lowering his gaze, he looked down at his open book, reading a passage, nodding. With a loud snap, he closed the book, turning to walk away. He mustn't miss his lord's first steps down the path of greatness. As his faithful servant, he must be by his side. Tap. 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 The man stopped, frowning. Turning around slightly, he stared down the other end of the bridge. He narrowed his eyes, as he saw a figure approaching from the other side. As the figure got close enough, he saw it was a woman with long dark green hair and dark skin tone. He was unsure as to why, but the woman's presence made him tense. Setsuna frowned as she stopped in her place, staring at the man before her. The two stood still, silent, as the man turned towards her fully. "You." Setsuna began, narrowing her eyes at the man. "You are not of this time, are you?" Her tone was a demand for an immediate response. "Oh." The man smirked. "How are you able to tell, if I may ask?" Setsuna glared at the joking tone in his voice. "I demand to know your name." The man chuckled. He opened his book, gazing into it, seemingly ignoring her, not responding. This angered Setsuna and was about to act when the man spoke. "Let's see, here we go." Setsuna Mayo, age 19, born on the 29th of October. Senior attendant in Mugen Academy, and finally. The man looked up at the surprised and weary Setsuna. Sailor Senshi of Pluto and Guardian of Time. Setsuna glared at the man. She held out her hand, and in a flash of light, a silver staff with a red orb on top appeared in her hand. With a firm grip on it, she got in a guarded stance. "State your name, Time Invader," she ordered. Closing his book, the man held it to his side, crossing his other arm over his chest as he slightly bowed to Setsuna, all the while keeping his smirk. "Greetings, Miss Pluto. I am Waz, loyal servant to my lord, the King of Time and Space." "King of Time and Space?" Setsuna questioned, wondering what that could mean. Ever since she has regained her memories of her past life 7 years ago, and has resumed her duty as Guardian of Time after regaining her powers, she has kept her eye out for anything connected to the past. For any sense of the past kingdom she knew would resurface in the current time. Just as she had when she ran into Usagi earlier that day and sensed the connection within the young girl. However, searching through her past life's memories, she had no recollection of there ever being a king of time and space. She shook her head, returning her glare on was. Whoever you are or serve, you have committed the forbidden act of traveling through time. You have two choices. Either return to your time immediately or be eliminated. Your presence in this timeline threatens the balance of time. It could very much alter the future. Oh. Was muttered, chuckling, angering her. Was shook his head. You misunderstand, Setsuna-san. I do not wish to threaten the future. In fact, I merely wish to ensure that it comes to pass. Setsuna eyes him suspiciously. Is that so? She asked, not lowering her guard. Was nodded, throwing his arm into the air. I have come to ensure my lord's path to the future happens as it should. That he comes to realize and achieve his destiny as the king of all. Oma Millennium. Boom. With a leap back, was dodged an attempted smash from Setsuna, the top of her staff slamming down on his previous spot, forming a small crater. He watched as Setsuna glared at him, lifting her staff up, pointing it towards him. Whatever your goals are, I will put an immediate stop to them. Whoever your lord might be, he shall not become a king of anything. She exclaimed, staring at the man strong. Anyone called Demon King could not be good, and whoever this person was to become that, as the guardian of time, she will strike them down before they could become a threat to both this planet and time itself. Immediately, was lost his smile, glaring at the woman. So, this woman wishes to prevent his Demon King's ascension. He could not allow that to happen. If you wish to stand in my lord's way of greatness. Putting the book away, where, Setsuna didn't know, only seeing him move the book behind his back, before moving his now empty arm back into view, was got into a stance. I must strike you down. Getting into her own stance, both citizens of time glared at one another, their hair and clothes ruffling in the passing breeze before with a push off the ground, they shot at each other. Year, 1671. Naruto blinked, looking around. Eyes wide and mouth agape, his brain tried to process what he was seeing. Clear blue sky. Short wooden buildings. Walking cows. People in dirty-looking clothes. Cows. A nearby field of crops. Did he mention the cows? Because there were several of them around. He blinked once. Twice. 3 times at a comedic fast pace. He turned around to face Tsukimi, who stepped out of a large contraption. Obvious what he just came out of himself. Where? He asked. Japan. In the year 1671. Tsukimi stated evenly, watching his reaction calmly. How? As I have stated, I came from the future. I used this time machine to travel through time. She said, gesturing to the contraption. The time machine was created out of parts from the destroyed Denliner. It was one of the few manufactured models created by the Resistance. Why? A precaution in the event my attempt to persuade you failed, besides the alternative choice of course. History goes that you begin your path towards becoming Oma Millennium by receiving your power in the year 2020, in this current month and day. I relied on the hope that taking you out of that time, would cause you to avoid whatever granted you your future power, and thus prevent the creation of Oma Millennium. Naruto raised a brow, wondering what kind of power she was talking about. However, shaking that out of his head for the moment, he once more looked around. He saw some people staring at them weirdly, but ignored it. So, this is the past, huh? Tsukimi nodded, walking to his side, as she took out a tablet, from somewhere. Correct. I have set the destination at random. It was by chance we arrived at this year. Naruto nodded, still looking around. He turned to the young woman when she started doing something on her tablet. Just then, the time machine, still trying to process that, behind them vanished from sight, making him jump, along with several people around him who just saw a strange large metal object vanish out of thin air. He turned to Tsukuyomi, a question in his gaze. I simply camouflaged the time machine. It wouldn't do to frighten people and mess with time more than I already have. A little too late for that. Naruto thought, sweat dropping as he could hear the questioning mumbles. Still, he just nodded, before frowning as a thought came to him. Exactly how long are we supposed to wait here? Couldn't you have just taken us to tomorrow? He asked, not seeing why they had to travel more than 300 years back in time. I can't believe I just thought that. Man, life in Japan is weird when I think of stuff like this normally. Still, actual time travel. This is so cool, Databeo. He thought happily, grinning widely. His friends would be so jealous if they knew. Tsukuyomi shook her head as she began walking into the village they were in, making Naruto follow her. I simply want to take precautions, so we only need to stay here for an hour or two, if my sync time calculations are right. Once it is midnight in your time, we can return. She answered. However, that wasn't the truth. He was correct, she could have skipped them forward ahead past the time he would have received his power, but she wanted to take the long road for a moment. She wanted to spend more time with Naruto, observe him, learn anything she could about him. There was still a chance he could become Oma Millennium, and she wanted to see if he showed any signs of his future self at the present. If she found any, she would have no choice but to eliminate him. Better to try and cut down a weed before it spreads, no matter the consequences it may cause. Right now, the possibility of Naruto becoming Oma was the biggest concern to focus on. She had already been too late to prevent him from meeting Waz and taking the ride watch. However, she thought, glancing at Naruto's hand, where whether he realized it or not, was still holding the watch he found. She looked at the blank picked window. He has yet to activate it. I still might have a chance. Man. While old, this place sure is cool. Naruto stated, grinning widely as he looked around. Tsukuyomi nodded in agreement, glancing around her. The village around her almost reminded her of the resistance base back in her time, only, cleaner compared to being filled with rubble and the people being more happy, compared to the fear-stricken and hungry ones. Fearful that each day could be their last, or suffer a sudden attack from monsters, or Kami forbid, Millennium himself. She frowned, hand tightening in a fist, shaking, as she couldn't help but remember the friends she had lost in their war. Of the families broken. Of the sounds of screams from men, women, and children. Of the countless lives lost. All because of Oma Millennium. Because of Naruto. She thought darkly. She glanced at Naruto, who was busy looking at the stores around them. I can't believe I'm actually walking beside the one who will one day grow to become the tyrannical demon king who turned my time into ruin. Who? Her frown deepened, her fingers twitching with a subconscious urge to reach for her phase phone X as an image of a young man in black and red clothing appeared in her head. However, with a deep inhale of breath, she calmed her nerves, relaxing her hand. No, stop. I can't think like that. This isn't Oma. Not now. She reminded herself. If all goes right, there won't be an Oma, and my future will return to normal. She thought, before frowning once more. Normal. What exactly was normal? Her entire life experience has been trying to survive in a war-torn world against a being with godlike power and an army of monsters of the worst kind. Should her home be turned into a peaceful one, would it still be her home? Would she even continue to exist, if the laws of time were to correct? What would happen to her? Would she die? Or would she just vanish? So many questions, yet no. Sugoi. The sudden shout from Naruto not only makes Tsukuyomi jump but also several people around them. Blinking, she turned to him, only to see him staring star eyes at something in front of them. Following his gaze, she blinked upon seeing where his gaze landed. A ramen stand. Moments later, Tsukuyomi was staring in shock, along with the assembled group behind her and the cooks in front, as they watched Naruto go through bowls of ramen like a savage beast, currently on his 10th. We just sat down a minute ago. Try as she might, Tsukuyomi could not make sense on how one person could eat nearly a dozen bowls of ramen in mere seconds, while she still hasn't touched her one. Finishing off his bowl with a content and happy sigh, Naruto set the bowl on the table with a grin. Ah! That was great, Dadabayo. He said. While it might not be a chiraku, ramen was ramen, so who was he to complain? Yeah. Tsukuyomi had no idea what to say to what she just witnessed. The other spectators, however. Incredible. Where does he put it all? His stomach must be a bottomless pit. Is he some kind of oni? Naruto could hear the comments of the people watching, and chuckled, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Soon the crowd began to disperse, now that the entertainment was over. Naruto gave his thanks to the chef as he collected the empty bowls. Left alone, Naruto turned to Tsukuyomi, his expression becoming serious. Hey, can I ask you something? Tsukuyomi swallowed the noodles in her mouth, before turning to the blonde, nodding as she wiped her mouth with a napkin. How did it start? He asked. How did, or will I guess, I become Oma Millennium? He couldn't lie that he wasn't curious. He becomes a demon king. It was just too absurd. Impossible to believe. Yet, there he was, in the past. Not to mention those dreams I had. He thought, frowning. Tsukuyomi frowned. No one was entirely sure how it began. Everyone had their own thoughts and theories. She stated, turning her gaze onto her ramen bowl, her reflection on the broth. From what I could find out, you didn't start off evil. Instead, you were a hero after gaining your powers as Millennium. You helped people and fought monsters that threatened Japan alongside other heroes. It wasn't until 2 years from now, that you suddenly changed, and started down your path to becoming Oma Millennium. The day you truly became Oma, became known as Oma Day. On that day, you began your war with the rest of the world. She looked at the frowning Naruto, her eyes locked with his. From what I know and could guess, your change may have started, on the day your younger sisters were killed. Jewelry. Hey, Sakura. Check this out. Turning her head, Sakura looked at Ino, noticing the 2-piece gold necklace around her head. She also saw the jeweled earrings. How do I look? Ino asked, posing. Great. Sakura answered with a smile, before holding up her hand, showing 2 rings, a pink one on her index finger, and an emerald jewel on her middle finger. What do you think of these? Ino nodded in approval. Matches you completely. She said with a small squeal. She turned back to the collection of jewelry on the table, eyeing each wantingly. I still can't believe the owner is selling these gorgeous things so cheaply. Sakura nodded in agreement. I know. Such a thing never happens. Some of these so-called, regular, stuff look like things that would take absurd amounts of money. Ino giggled, picking up an onyx ring. All that it means is good fortune for us. I can't wait to show Dash. Thud. The 2 jumped, startled by the sudden sound. Turning around, the 2 saw a large woman on the floor. Ino blinked in surprise. Whoa! What happened to her? Sakura shrugged, and was about to head towards the woman to make sure she was alright, when... Thud. 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 Looking around, the 2 watched in shock, confusion and worry, as more and more of the women in the store fell to the ground. What's happening? Exclaimed the worried Naru. I don't know. Sakura responded, just as confused. I think we should dash. Ugh. Turning her head, Sakura saw Ino falling to her knees, holding her head. Ino. She said worriedly, before she also groaned, holding her head as her vision began to spin. What's happening? She muttered, feeling like her body was getting weak. Naru gasped as she witnessed Sakura and Ino fall over. He. Turning her gaze, Naru spotted her mother. Mom! Something's wrong with these people. They need help. Ha ha ha. Naru frowned, confused as her mother continued to chuckle sinisterly. Mom. Mrs. Osaka chuckled darkly, her eyes beginning to shine an ominous red. Foolish human, I'm not your mother. With a gasp and widening eyes, Naru stepped back as her mother's appearance began to change. Her body began to grow and expand, causing her clothes to tear slightly, with the front of her dress tearing part way, revealing not only a fair amount of her cleavage and front but also a sickly yellow, almost light green star on her chest. Her skin tone deepened in shade, becoming a pale violet, with her hair, which has grown in length a bit and became wild in design, turning a pale lilac. On her forehead, a miniature star appeared, similar in design to the one on her chest. Her pupils and iris shrunk in size, as her sclera turned red. With her mouth in a wide wicked grin, it showed her teeth sharpening. Shaking in absolute fear at the monstrosity before her, Naru stepped back, as Morga grinned darkly at her. He. There's nowhere to run, human. I have already collected enough energy for my MSTRS, but I'm sure she won't mind a bit more. The monster said, before charging at Naru, who screamed in terror. Kaya-awaya. Usagi. M. With a groan, Usagi slowly opened her eyes. As her misty vision cleared, she sat up, rubbing her eye. Looking around, she saw she was in her room. With a wide yawn, she rubbed the back of her head. Mwah! What a weird dream. She muttered, the image of the hidden-faced man still fresh on her mind. The man, the forest, the statues, they felt so strange. Like they were real. Like she really was in that strange forest. Maybe I should cut back on the comics and manga, maybe. How could she simply ignore her precious babies? Sure, they gave her weird dreams, but still. Blinking, Usagi finally noticed that she wasn't alone. Lifting her head up, she saw a familiar cat sitting on her bed, staring at her. She blinked at the cat. The cat blinked back. Usagi blinked twice. The cat blinked. Usagi blinks 3 times. The cat started to look annoyed. Usagi pointed at the cat. The cat with the bald spot. The cat's left temple pulsed before it spoke. Excuse me. It's not a bald spot, thank you very much. It exclaimed. Usagi stared at the cat, frozen in place. She couldn't even blink, her brain trying to process what just occurred. She sat there for who knows how long. Seconds. Minutes. Hours. Years. What year was it? Were hair buns still cool? In the end though, with a shake of her head, Usagi simply decided to lie back down on her bed, back facing the cat. Good night. She said, closing her eyes. A dream. That was it. That was the answer to her situation. She was still sleeping, and just dreamt that the cat talked. I mean, cats talking. What was this, an anime? She thought with a small giggle, waiting for her consciousness to awaken any second now. I'm sure having a lot of weird dreams lately. First a princess, then a forest with statues, and now talking cats. Wait till I tell Naruto. Of course, someone didn't like being ignored. OWWW. With a pained yelp, Usagi shot up from her bed, holding her face, where a new set of small claw marks laid. Oh wee! Ow! She cried, hopping from foot to foot in a vain attempt to try and ease the pain she felt. Sitting on the bed, the cat smirked, apparently happy and proud of the harm she inflicted. Now do you think this is a dream? The feminine-voiced cat asked. Moving her hands away from her face, Usagi blinked at the cat, before with a startled cry, she fell backward and over her bed, landing on the floor with a crash. Quickly getting back up, she ducked behind the side of the bed, eyeing the cat fearfully. Talk. A cat just talked. How is that possible? With a paw to her mouth, the cat cleared her throat. Usagi, right? My name is Luna. First off, I want to give my thanks to you and your friends for removing the bandages some mean kids put on my forehead. It was really uncomfortable, and it also messed with my powers and prevented me from communicating. The now named Luna said, smiling at the girl. Now, on to business. I was very fortunate to run into you this morning. You see, I've been looking for special people like you for a long time. You see, you are one of the few people on this planet that possess a special inner power. Powers that allow you to become protectors of the planet. A sailor senshi. She told her. Usagi stared at Luna, silent. After a while, Luna started to worry. Did you hear what I said? She asked. Usagi nodded. Did you understand what I said? Usagi shook her head. Luna sighed. Okay. Let me see how I can explain better. How can you talk? You're a cat. Usagi muttered, still unable to come to heads with that part. Luna scoffed. Do not let my current appearance fool you. Luna told her, shaking a paw at her. I might look like a cat, but I am not one. I am, unfortunately, cursed to take this form by a stupid genie. A genie? Luna nodded, narrowing her eyes at the memory. Yes, along with a companion of mine. However, how I became a cat does not matter. What does, is your destiny to become a sailor senshi. Wah! Usagi exclaimed, holding her head. I don't understand what's going on. Luna sighed, wishing she had something to help prove her words. Unfortunately, being a cat, she was short on any pockets, as such didn't have any items on her person she could use as evidence. While she might be a talking cat, far from a normal one, she was by no means magical. Aside from an ability to sense energy, both good and bad, she had no special ability. Such as storing objects. She wished she did, or at least was granted the ability to morph into her normal human form, to have pockets to carry items. But sadly, she didn't have the option for either at the moment. All because of that stupid cat genie. She mentally grumbled, swearing to make that fool pay when she found him. Shaking her head, Luna focused back on Usagi, sweat dropping when she saw the girl still panicking around. Usagi. Please calm yourself so I may explain better. She asked, but was ignored as the bun-headed blonde instead began to roll around on her bed, complaining about all these weird things happening to her like weird dreams and talking cat. Luna sighed, and was about to shout at the girl, only to jump as suddenly, Usagi shot up from her bed. Blinking, Luna stared at the girl, who looked around, as if looking for something. Usagi? Are you alright? She asked, worried that she might have broken the girl. However, Usagi didn't hear her, instead focusing on a sudden sound that reached her ears. Help me. Someone, please. Help me. Usagi blinked. Naru. Crossing his arms, was blocked a kick. The impact made him stagger back slightly, however, he quickly regained his position as he grabbed the stretched leg of his opponent, and with a spin on his heel, tossed Setsuna over his shoulder. The woman, in a graceful show of acrobatics, flipped herself through the air, landing back on the ground safely. Steeled eyes glared at the man as Setsuna stood up. The two had moved their fight into an isolated part in the city, neither willing to back down, and even more willing to continue. Was to test the Pluto Senshi's skills, Setsuna to get a read on the time traveler and his true intentions. Was sent Setsuna his never-ending amused grin, something she was really starting to despise. Legend tells of your skill in battle, maiden of time. Of your courage against evil. However, even you, one of the mightiest of senshi, will and have fallen before the power of my Mao-sama. Setsuna's eyes narrowed, growing harder in intensity. Perhaps in your time, but time can always be corrected. Was chuckled, growing even more amused. Corrected? What is there to correct? You speak of ensuring the future is unchanged. Yet, right now, you do just that. I am not trying to change the future. I'm merely ensuring it comes to pass as it should. The future's fate is to fall under my lord's power. I can't believe that. Setsuna shouted, glaring at Waz. Her grip on her staff tightened. Images flashed through her head. Images of people screaming. Of explosions. Of a castle in flames. Of a group of men and women lying lifelessly on the ground. Of a woman in tears. Not again. She mentally declared. Even if what you say is true, and that is indeed this planet's future, as the guardian of time, I will do what I must and ensure this planet's continued survival. Even if it means going against my vows. Waz sighed, shaking his head in disappointment. Disappointing. However, if you wish to stand in the way of my Mao-sama's rise to godhood. Raising a hand, it began to glow in green energy. You will fall. Thrusting his arm forward, he shot a bolt of energy at Setsuna. Setsuna, in turn, slammed the end of her staff on the ground. She became surrounded in a bubble of light green energy, deflecting the bolt as her surroundings exploded, though she remained unharmed. Looking up, Setsuna saw Waz rushing towards her, quicker than the average man. With a jump, he leaped towards her from above, pulling his arm back, energy again surrounding his hand. Getting within distance, Waz threw a punch at the shielded woman. The fist struck the shield, causing a shockwave of force. Setsuna gritted her teeth, the surprisingly strong blow fighting her concentration. Her barrier began to crack, making Waz smirk. Applying more force, the shield around Setsuna burst into pieces, launching the woman back through the air. However, before she could get too far, something wrapped around her. Looking back, Setsuna saw she was wrapped around Waz's gray scarf, the fabric stretching out far longer than a normal scarf. Waz, with a firm grip on his scarf, pulled Setsuna back towards him, and over his shoulder. Once over him, he slammed her strong onto the ground. The impact erupted a smoke screen of dust. Keeping his eyes on the cloud of dirt, he retracted his scarf, wrapping it back around his shoulders. The cloud clearing, it revealed Setsuna, who got back up to her feet, scrapes all over her body with some cuts and minor bleeding, but otherwise fine. Fine, but angry. Glaring at Waz, Setsuna decided it was time to stop playing around. I had hoped to not use this, but you have left me no choice. Oh. Waz muttered, smirking as he knew what was about to happen. Narrowing her eyes in a glare, Setsuna concentrated. On her forehead, a glowing symbol appeared. Pluto. With a firm stare, Setsuna threw her arm up into the sky as her body began to glow in green energy. Pluto planet power, make up. The glow encased her whole form, temporarily blinding Waz as he had to shield his eyes. The glow held for a moment, before it slowly vanished. Looking forward, he noted Setsuna's change. Part of her hair was tied in a single bun. Her clothes changed into a more sailor-theme outfit consisting of white form-fitting one-piece around her torso, a black choker around her neck, a black collar with a garnet-colored crystal hanging off it, white elbow fittings of gloves, black skirt, and black boots. She had garnet-colored earrings with a tiara around her forehead with a small garnet gem in the middle. On her chst front, she had a large maroon-colored bow with a circular garnet gem in the middle and a larger secondary maroon bow on the back of her waist. With her staff in hand, the guardian of Pluto and time, Sailor Senshi Pluto stood firm against Waz. However, even with Setsuna's true power out and change in form, Waz didn't look the least bit worried. Well now, it seems I will need to start taking this seriously. he stated as Pluto glared mightily at him. You will not have the chance, fiend. By the power of time, I will end you here and now. She declared, aiming her staff at him, the garnet orb at the heart-shaped tip glowing with power, ready for her attack to be unleashed. However, before she could release the attack, Setsuna froze, her head snapping towards another direction. This feeling. She thought, her senses alerting her of something. I detect the presence of darkness and evil, as well as fear and panic. Someone is in trouble. She frowned, glancing at Waz, who remained unmoving. Her frown deepened, conflicted about what she should do. Obviously, it was her duty to ensure the future's safety, and as such, her focus should be on eliminating the threat in front of her. However, her grip on the staff tightened. Letting out a heavy breath, her stance relaxed as she set the staff end down. Waz raised a brow at her, yet continued to look amused. This is not over. She told him, before leaping up into the air. Waz looked after her, watching her jump high into the air onto a small nearby building, before leaping towards another, moving further away. He watched until Setsuna was no longer in view. Left alone, Waz reached behind his back and took out his book from somewhere. Holding it under his arm, Waz looked up at the sky, nodding as he saw it getting darker with only a small amount of light left. Turning, he moved to leave the park. He must find his Mao. It was time for the Lord of Time and Space to rise. It was time for Oma Millennium to rise. Naruto. Slam. Tsukuyomi groaned as Naruto slammed her strong against the side of a building, the wooden wall creaking from the force. Opening her eyes, she was met with the fierce burning glare of Naruto Namikaze. What did you say? He hissed out. Immediately after Tsukuyomi's last statement concerning his so-called destined BRTH to becoming a demon king, and the cause, Naruto grabbed Tsukuyomi and proceeded to drag her out of the ramen booth, barely even managing to set down some money in time as he shot out of his seat so fast. After dragging the woman somewhere out of earshot, he began ensuring he got answers. Tsukuyomi flinched under Naruto's glare, her hand reacting by reaching for her foam blaster, but didn't take it out. Looking away from his glare, she bit her lip. She debated telling him, but feeling his grip on her dress tighten, she knew it was too late to take back her spoken words and had no choice but to speak. Your path to becoming Oma, it is theorized that it first started after the deaths of your sisters, Azuka Namikaze and Yuriko Murakami. Naruto's glare hardened, gritting his teeth. How? He growled. He was in no mood for jokes or lies. He wanted answers and he wanted them now. Tsukuyomi was silent for a while, before sighing. An attack. A monster attack. They got caught in the middle of it. Monster? He asked, his glare still holding. Tsukuyomi nodded. There hasn't been a monster attack in years. He shouted, thinking she was lying to him. Tsukuyomi shook her head. I don't know how it happened, only that there was a monster attacking the city that day and out of the casualties, your sisters were included. Naruto's fists were now shaking, his anger growing. That day? What day? When does this happen? Tsukuyomi closed her mouth, heavily debating the possible consequences that might arise if she were to speak up. She cursed herself for saying anything. She should have stayed quiet. Kami, her plans were falling, and she had no one to blame but herself. She revealed herself to Naruto, took him to the past, told him of his future, actually took him around a village in the past, and now told him how he becomes the future demon king. She was doing the exact thing she was hoping to prevent. Leading Naruto straight to becoming Oma. Maybe killing him was the best option. Tsukuyomi. Naruto shouted, making her jump as he kept glaring at her. When does this happen? Tonight. Naruto stared at her, his face devoid of all anger, all negativity. Devoid of all emotion really. Silently, He let go of Tsukuyomi, and if she was honest with herself, his silence scared her more than his anger. She stared at him, unsure of what he will do, keeping her hand on her phonorite watch just in case. Instead, Naruto turned and walked out of the alley they were in. Blinking, Tsukuyomi quickly followed after him. They stepped out onto the street, walking in a direction with her after him. "Where are you going?" she asked, cautiously, eyeing his every move. For a moment, Naruto was quiet, leading her to think he was ignoring her out of frustration. "Your time machine," he said, anger heavy in his voice. "You are taking me back to my time," he ordered. "I'm going to save my sisters, and after that, I never want to see you again," he stated, glaring at her over his shoulder. The intensity of his glare made her flinch. Naruto turned his gaze back forward, continuing his march. "I don't care about my future. I don't care whether or not I become this demon king you're so worried about. I don't even care what happens in the future. What I do care about is the safety of my family. Screw the future. Screw Oma Millennium. Screw you. As far as I know, you are an idiot. If what you say is true, and I become Oma because my sisters die, then shouldn't you have focused on saving them?" He shouted at her, stopping for a moment to turn to her, glaring at her with all his might. Tsukuyomi jumped, frowning as she looked away from him. He was right. She knew he was right. She had been so focused on stopping the creation of Oma Millennium, she had neglected to stop the cause. She was such an idiot. Scoffing, Naruto shook his head and continued towards his destination. After a few seconds, Tsukuyomi followed. Soon, the two returned to where the time machine was parked. Silently, Tsukuyomi took out her tablet and pressed a few buttons, uncamouflaging the vehicle. Lowering the ramp, the two entered. Naruto immediately moved behind the controls, grabbing the side levers. He moved them around with a confused look on his face, before cursing in frustration. He glared at Tsukuyomi. "How do you make this thing work?" Tsukuyomi frowned at him. "What do you plan to do once you return your time?" she asked, wanting to know his intentions. "Obviously I'm going to save my sisters from that monster," he said, trying to make what he believed to be the controls work by shaking them. "How?" "I don't know, alright?" he shouted, dropping his head. "I don't know," he muttered, frustration in his voice. His grip on the controls shook, frustration fueling him, aimed at himself. At his weakness. "But I have to do something. I'm their big brother, I can't just stand by and do nothing. Azuka is just a little girl. She has her whole life to live and be happy, and Yuriko, she already lost her mother. She shouldn't have to suffer any more pain. I promised myself I would always protect them, to be there for them." He gritted his teeth strong. "I don't care what happens. Whether I live or die. Whether I become a demon king or not. All I care about is making sure they are okay. So, please." He raised his head up at Tsukuyomi, whose eyes widened, seeing tears going down his face. "Please, Tsukuyomi. Help me," he begged. Tsukuyomi bit her lip, debating on what she should do. She could save the future and prevent Oma Millennium by saving the girls, or make things worse by keeping him away. Away from where he is destined to gain his power. Should she risk everything on a reckless decision? Honestly, she didn't even know what path led to what. Everything was a maze now, with no true way to go. Ever since I came to this time, I've been nothing but reckless. She thought, sighing, before looking at Naruto. Making up her mind, she approached him. "Move over," she said. Naruto smiled as he allowed Tsukuyomi to take his place. He watched as she grabbed the levers, holding her hand out in front of her, summoning the holoscreen as the machine started up. "Time machine," the computer announced. "Temporal displacement system." Tsukuyomi muttered, pressing some buttons while Naruto moved to the sidewall to hang on to something. Setting the year destination, she looked at Naruto, who nodded. Nodding back, she gripped the levers. Activate. Outside, the time machine roared to life as it floated into the air. Nearby citizens saw this, and screamed in shock and fear, some falling down, all eyes on the flying monstrosity before them. The time machine flew into the sky, where a time portal appeared allowing the machine to fly through, closing behind them. Heading back to the year 2020. Back in 2020, Japan. Standing on top of a building across the street from Jewelry OSAP, a figure faced the front of the large jewelry store. With the setting sun behind them, their form was hidden by shadow, the reflecting rays casting his form on the street below like a behemoth, their long cape flapping in the wind. The figure stared at the store from behind the white mask covering his eyes. His eyes glanced at the front door, before moving on to the windows, eyeing each one carefully before picking one. Shifting slightly, the figure leaped off the rooftop, soaring over the street below with incredible height. He was practically flying. Gracefully landing on a balcony, the man put his hands against the window in front of him. It wasn't long until he managed to open the window. After his third heist, unlocking doors and windows have become quite easy for him. Opening the window, he put a foot inside. With his form illuminated by half shadow half room illumination, his appearance was visible. He was a tall man wearing a black top hat, a black cape that's red on the inside, a black tuxedo, white undershirt, white vest, white gloves, and a white bow tie. His eyes were hidden behind a white domino mask with attached white cotton lenses. Stepping into the seemingly empty building, the masked man looked around, cautiously taking a few steps in. The interior was dark, no lights on, and he couldn't see anyone around from his height. He nodded in approval. Wouldn't do for there to be guards to stall him from doing his work. He was there on a personal mission. I've looked all over the city. This is the last place to check. It must be here, I know it. My instincts have never failed me before. It must be here, the silver crystal. Ever since he could remember, he had been plagued with strange dreams. Most blurry even to this day, except one constantly clear. A large diamond. The silver crystal. He didn't know why it was important, or if it was even real, but something told him he had to find it, no matter what. So, he became a jewel thief, developing the skills necessary throughout the years of his growth. From taking candy from stores as a child to learning to take toys from the mall. All leading up to this moment. He took to dressing up after Arsène Lupin, a famous fictional French thief, the gentleman burglar, as he was known. The stories about Lupin, Arsène Lupin, gentleman burglar, were his favorite growing up, and so, he modeled his alias after the man. He became Kamen Tuxedo, gentleman jewel thief of Japan. Or at least his town. He did not do this for fame or fortune, but merely the thrill of thieving. The thrill of sneaking into guarded places and taking things right under the noses of guards. Didn't mean he didn't keep what he took, however. Where would be the fun if he didn't? Shaking his head to discard the thoughts and memories, Kamen Tuxedo cautiously stepped further into the building. He kept an eye out for any security cameras. However, strangely enough, when he spotted the cameras, they were all off. Behind his mask, he narrowed his eyes. His instincts alerted him that something was not right. Approaching the edge, he looked down at the ground below. His eyes widened slightly, seeing a large gathering of women lying on the floor. They seemed to be unconscious, but what happened? He thought. Suddenly, he heard a scream. No. Stop. Naru screamed in fear, back against the wall as the cackling Morga stood before her. Nowhere to run, human. Time for you to die. Morga stated. Grabbing Naru by the neck, Morga began squeezing, laughing as Naru effortlessly grabbed her arm, trying to pry it off. Struggle all you want, this is your end. From his position, Kamen Tuxedo cursed, wondering what he should do. The obvious choice would be to save the girl, but it would not only reveal his presence, but he was unsure if he could take on that monstrous-looking creature. He could also continue his search for the silver crystal unnoticed, but there was no telling if there were any more monsters around the store. Sneaking past and knocking out guards was one thing, but monsters? He had seen the damage they can do against normal humans. Contrary to his costume, he was no Super Sentai. He glanced towards the window he used to enter, debating on whether he should leave, or stay and try and save the girl from the monster. This isn't my problem. He tried to reason with himself. However, try as he might, he could not turn away from the scene below him, as the creature choked the helpless and scared teen. His grip on the railing tightened. This isn't my problem, this isn't my problem. He thought in a mantra. Naru struggled to breathe, her vision blurring. Morga held up an arm, her claws sharpening. Die, human! Morga shouted, bringing her claw down. DMN it! Tuxedo cursed, jumping on top of the railing. He was about to jump down and save the girl, when... Hiya! Flying through the air, Sailor Pluto kicked Morga away, dropping Naru, who breathed heavily, sucking in as much air as she could. Meanwhile, the kick sent Morga flying through the air, until she hit the wall, cracking it slightly as the creature dropped. Groaning, it quickly got back up, glaring at Sailor Pluto, who stood in front of Naru defensively. Who the hell are you? She demanded. Pluto didn't respond, glancing at the dazed Naru, then glancing towards the group of unconscious women before turning her focus back on Morga, narrowing her eyes. So, this is the source of evil I've sensed. Morga growled, annoying at the silence. The silent type, huh? Well, let's see how long you stay silent, when I tear you apart. She roared, charging at Pluto. The sky was a deep orange as the sun was only half seen over the horizon. On the outskirts of the plaza, a half-dozen or so police cars were parked in a group. Policemen gathered around the placed police line. Amongst them, stood Police Captain Minato Namikaze. He looked towards the closed-off area, frowning with narrowed eyes. When he had gotten the call of a sudden monster appearing along with a barrage of men in black, he was unsure of what to think. It's been nearly 3 years since the last known monster attack. He thought. He idly recalled his first meeting with a monster, back when he had been a rookie. Back then. Minato gasped, standing in the heavy falling rain, staring silently at the armored figure in front of him. In his gasp, was a handheld pistol, yet he could not find the will to lift it, his gaze solely on the figure. Their form hidden by the night's darkness, with the only thing visible was the large lit eyes, resembling headlights on a vehicle. The figure stood silent, while in front of them, was a metallic-looking monster, lying lifelessly on the wet concrete floor. It was scary, obviously. He didn't think he would ever forget that day. And now there's a monster appearing all of a sudden, holding a large gathering of civilians hostage. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. He turned to another policeman. Any news? He asked him. The man shook his head. We haven't gotten any word, sir. No demands. Nothing. This thing's staying quiet, so it can't be good. Minato nodded, agreeing. The longer we wait, the more in danger those people could be in. Those guys in black are all over the place. With the weapons they carry, a single glimpse of a cop, and things could get worse before they get better. Minato sighed, once more agreeing with a nod. He eyed the seemingly empty entrance of the plaza. If he had to guess, the hostages were held together in the center, out of their sight, considering any other exit was blocked and yet still no reported sign. He turned to the man. How long till special forces get here? The man spoke into his communicator. After getting a response, he looked at the captain. Sir, they're en route, 5 minutes. Minato frowned. That was still too long. He looked towards the setting sun. Subconsciously, he would say that nightfall would come in 5 minutes. I don't like this. Why would the monster be holding people hostage? Why not kill them? Is it planning something? If so, what? He didn't have the patience to wait around. Perhaps it was something that he got from his wife, but Minato knew how dangerous their current situation was. They had no idea about the monster's motives. Whether it was independent or sent by someone. Worst of all, its intentions for the people it's captured. His hands clenched into tight fists, shaking as he imagined what would be happening to the trapped people. Narrowing his eyes, he decided. I'm going in. He stated, moving to the back of his police car. The man blinked, looking at him. Sir. I can't just stand around and do nothing. Those people could be in danger and need help. So I'm going in. Minato stated, opening the trunk. Inside, was an assortment of weapons, ammo, and most of all, protective Kevlar armor. Putting the vest on, he calmly assembled his weapons, sticking to handguns and a backup or two to not slow him down. Sir, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but going alone. That's crazy. The man told him. Minato did not slow down in getting ready. Reaching into the trunk, he pulled out a black briefcase. On it was a label. GX. You're going to use that? But it hasn't been fully tested. Then it's a good time for a field test. You're more than welcome to come too and watch my back, if you can keep up. The blonde man said, turning to him. The man sighed at him. Please give me a moment to get ready, sir. You got 20 seconds. Minato told him, smirking. Suddenly, everyone heard the sound of an explosion. The sound coming from the plaza. Turning his head, Minato saw a rising tower of black smoke. Make that 10. Carrying the whimpering Azuka, Yuriko ran through the alleys between and behind buildings. She panted as her stamina drained, but she pushed through, even as her legs began to burn from the seemingly endless running. After that monster and his henchmen appeared, the people had been grouped together, threatened with the weapons the henchmen carried and pushed into a building. Yuriko, however, has no intention of sticking around and putting. Her sweet foster/adopted sister in danger, and through a slide of luck, the moment the monster and gunmen were distracted trying to get the large group into the chosen building, she picked up Azuka, and as stealthy as she could, got them out of there. So, using the buildings as cover, the young teen ran in a direction, any direction, that would take them out of the danger zone, and to safety. Once out, she will book it towards home to drop Azuka off before notifying the police. That is if they weren't aware of the situation already. However, her route to freedom was about to be blocked off. Now, where do you think you're going? Staggering to a stop, Yuriko gasped as the monster appeared from around the building in front of her, blocking her path. Stepping back, Yuriko glared at the monster, while she felt Azuka shake in her arms. Placing a comforting hand on the back of the redhead's head, Yuriko glanced around to see a way to escape. Unfortunately, the monster saw this and laughed. It is useless to escape, human. With a snap of its fingers, shocker combat men appeared in the alley, surrounding her. Looking around, Yuriko cursed at the large number. The only safe way was the empty alley next to her. Taking the chance, she ran down it. Get her. The monster ordered. Immediately, the combat men chased after Yuriko. Exiting out the alley, Yuriko noticed she now stood in an empty street. Looking around, she was about to move to try and hopefully lose her chasers. Unfortunately, before she could, the shocker combat men once more surrounded her. Before she could even attempt to figure out a way to escape, she was boxed in. Stranded in the middle, she looked around worriedly, Azuka shaking more in her arms. Hearing a laugh, she turned and watched as the monster casually approached her. Didn't I tell you, girl? It's useless to escape. He mocked her, chuckling. Yuriko gritted her teeth in anger, glaring at the monster with all her might. Just let us go, UBSTRD. Raising a hand, the monster waved a finger at her. Not going to happen, girlie. You and the rest of the humans are needed for something special. Of course. Holding out his arm, in a flash of light, a wicked-looking sword appeared in his hand, looking sharp to the touch. The sight of it made Yuriko's eyes widen, taking a step back as she held Azuka tighter. We can't have you attempting to escape again. As such, what say we remove your legs? With a dark chuckle, the monster began to approach her, as Yuriko began to panic, trying to figure out a way to escape, but having no answer to it. Her heart began to increase in pace, sweat gathering on her forehead, as her grip on Azuka tightened more the closer the monster got. With each second that passed, her eyes grew wider, fear gripping her heart. Was this it? Was she going to die? Was Azuka going to die? No. With her fear making it strong for her to breathe, she had one last thought. A prayer of hope. A call to the one who has been like a knight of light towards her for so many years. Naruto. Yuriko. Azuka-chan. As if summoned, Naruto and Tsukuyomi ran down the road towards them. Tsukuyomi held up her arm, the phase phone X, blaster mode, in her hand firing on the monster, making it stagger back from the energy bolts. She also fired on the shocker combat men, pushing them back and away from the girls. Naruto helped by throwing a strong punch to the closest one near him. Keeping the momentum, he punched another, kicking a third. Grabbing Yuriko's arm, he pulled her and Azuka behind him. Naruto, /Oniai-chan. The two said happily at the sight of their brother. Are you two alright? He asked, not taking his eyes off the group before him. Behind him, Yuriko nodded, sounding in confirmation. We need to get out of here. But there are people imprisoned. We can't just leave them. Yumiko argued. Naruto frowned, not happy innocent lives were in danger. However, we can alert the police to help those people once we get out. He stated. Right now, his focus was on getting his sisters to safety no matter what. You're not going anywhere. The monster stated after regaining its focus after the surprise attack. The same was said for the henchmen as they moved to capture the four. Tsukuyomi retaliated by firing at the henchmen. We gotta move. She told Naruto. Nodding, Naruto grabbed Yuriko's hand, and with their younger sister in her arms, began pulling them away while Tsukuyomi provided them cover fire. I don't think so. The monster stated as its sword crackled with energy. Throwing the blade forward, it launched a wave of energy lightning bolts that struck the ground around the escaping group. Numerous but small sparkling explosions erupted around them, making them cry out in panic. With a dark chuckle, the shocker monster approached them. Usagi. Slow down. Where are you going? Luna asked as she ran after Usagi, who was currently running down the empty sidewalk, illuminated by the lamp posts with the darkening night. Apart from a few passing cars, the street was relatively empty with night approaching, so she didn't have to worry about anyone hearing her. She didn't know what happened. One moment she was trying to figure out how to convince Usagi of her new duty as a sailor senshi, when the girl muttered something, before suddenly shooting off her bed, ran out of her room, went downstairs, and with a quick, heading out. Be back soon, to her stunned and confused family, she ran out of her house and down the street with Luna following her, ignoring the calls of her mother. Naru's in trouble. I don't know how, but I know she needs help. Usagi said, not slowing down as she ran as fast as she could towards jewelry OSAP. She honestly didn't know whether or not Naru really was in trouble, as she could have just imagined hearing her voice, but either way, she could not ignore it. She also didn't know if Naru was even still at her family's jewelry store, but it was worth checking. Take caution, child. Danger lurks in your future. Usagi came to a complete halt, her eyes widening. The action caught Luna by surprise, and as such, didn't have time to stop herself, leading to her to crash against the back of Usagi's legs. With a pained yelp, she was bounced back, landing on her rear. Groaning, the cat used her paw to rub her pulsing nose. Ow! Why did you stop so suddenly? She asked, a bit irritated. Usagi didn't respond back, too busy looking around, searching for the source of the voice. It sounded familiar. It sounded like that man in my dream. She thought, narrowing her eyes in confusion. She then shook her head to clear her mind. She must be going crazy. First, she heard Naru's voice and a man from a dream. Okay, I really should lay off the sweets and manga before bed. She thought, before continuing her run. Luna cursed and followed after her. Soon, the two made it to the store. Standing before the entrance, Usagi tried to open it, only to see it was locked. Of course. She thought, groaning in displeasure. Leaning against the glass, she cupped her eyes and tried to look inside. Unfortunately, the interior was completely dark, making that task difficult. Is Naru even in there? She thought, frowning. Maybe it really was her imagination. Usagi. Luna called. Looking at her, the teen saw Luna narrowing her eyes at the store through the glass. I sense a dark presence inside the store. The talking cat reported. Usagi blinked at that, wondering what she meant by a dark presence. Boom! She jumped, hearing what sounded like an explosion, coming from inside the store. Naru! She called, wondering if her friend really was in danger. Determined to get inside, Usagi slammed her shoulder against the entrance. However, the glass held, not even cracking. Ow! She moaned, rubbing her shoulder. Glaring at the glass doors, Usagi would not give up, as she tried again. Over and over, she slammed her shoulder against the glass doors. Usagi, stand back. Luna told her. Trusting the cat, Usagi did as she was told, and watched as Luna leaped up, her paw stretched out as her sharp claws slid out. With a slash, the glass doors shattered into pieces. All right. Usagi cheered, congratulating Luna. She carefully stepped over the glass, glad she had put on her shoes before leaving her house, and entered the store. Inside, she gasped as she looked upon what was happening. With the unconscious girl under her arm, Pluto leaped out of the way as Morga attempted to cut her to pieces with her long claws. In the air, Pluto narrowed her eyes as the slash left deep gashes into the stone pillar that took the damage. Obviously, she will need to be careful. Raising her staff, she aimed the top at the creature, the orb glowing. From it, bolts of energy shot at Morga. With a surprising show of agility, Morga dodged the bolts by jumping out of the way, flipping back. Pluto landed back on the ground, just as Morga landed beside a glass display case holding gems. Glancing at them, Morga slammed her hand into the case, breaking the glass as she grabbed a handful of jewels. With a dark smirk, she slashed her arm out, launching the gems as if they were bullets as they cut through the air at incredible speed. Seeing the incoming threat, Pluto once more jumped up to dodge them. However, that was what Morga counted on, as she leaped at the airborne senshi, claws out to stab her. Seeing them, Pluto used her staff to block the strike, saving her and the girl's lives, before kicking Morga on the chst, launching her back, as Pluto landed. I can't fight properly while carrying this girl. I need to place her somewhere safe. She thought, glancing at the girl held under her arm. Naru. Pluto's eyes widened at the sudden voice and quickly turned around. Her surprise grew when she saw who was standing at the entrance. Usagi? She thought, surprised to see the young girl she had met earlier that day. She'd question what she was doing there, but didn't have time, as Morga also noticed the new arrival, and with a cackle, charged forward, changing targets. Figuring out the creature's intentions, Pluto cursed and once more launched energy bolts at the purple creature woman from her staff. However, Morga began to dodge the bolts, still keeping her charge. Not about to allow the creature to harm innocence, Pluto twirled her staff, before holding it high. The staff began to glow intensely with green energy before she slammed it end first onto the ground. A wave of air seemed to shoot out from it in all directions, throwing Morga back, as Usagi covered her face with her arms as she and Luna tried to hold their ground. Canceling her technique, Pluto jumped back in a mighty leap, crossing the large room and landing beside Usagi, who gave a yelp at her appearance. Placing the girl, who Pluto figured was called Naru, down beside Usagi, she looked at the blonde. "Take your friend and get out of here," she said, standing up straight. Usagi blinked at her. Who are you?" she asked. Stunned by the appearance of the woman, who looked strangely familiar, yet couldn't make out her identity. As she stared at her face, something in her mind told her this woman was familiar, yet couldn't tell from where, as if something was stopping her from remembering. Pluto shook her head, her attention back on Morga. "There's no time to explain. It's dangerous to be here right now. So please, take your friend and get away from here," the Time Guardian stated. She couldn't allow the two girls to come to harm. Especially Usagi. The girl was too important. Usagi frowned, trying to understand the situation. However, before she could say anything, the three, counting Luna, heard Morga speak. "No one's going anywhere," the demon shouted, raising her hand up, and snapped her fingers. Suddenly, the entrance got blocked with a dark violet energy field. Not just the doors, but also the windows, making the hidden Kamen Tuxedo curse, seeing his chance to escape gone. Morga's dark smile grew. "And that's not all," she muttered, snapping her fingers once more. Suddenly, all the knocked-out females on the floor, which Usagi noticed for the first time, began to get up, standing one by one. Raising their heads, they showed their eyes to be glowing ominous red. Slowly, they all turned to the group, making Usagi yelp, scared, even more, when the women began to slowly walk towards them. Pluto clicked her tongue in annoyance, her grip on her staff tightening. "Just perfect," she thought sarcastically. As if her night couldn't get any worse. "Look out!" Naruto shouted as he pulled Yuriko and Izuka down, just as the monster shot an energy sphere at them. The sphere sailed over their heads, hitting the side of a building with an explosion. Izuka cried in fright from the explosion. The Shocker combat men moved to capture the siblings, however, Tsukuyomi would not allow them as she moved in their way, shooting at them with her blaster. Naruto sent her a nod of thanks before urging his sisters back up. "We've got to keep moving. Come on." "I don't think so," the monster stated, his sword glowing. Holding the blade up, he slashed it down. From the glowing blade, an arc of energy shot out. The vertical curve energy blade sailed towards the group, cutting the pavement on its way. Naruto and Tsukuyomi's eyes widened as the blade came closer. Heart pumping rapidly, Naruto quickly acted. "Ah!" Yuriko yelped as she was more tossed than pushed to the side, her arms tightening around Izuka. She covered the girl as the blade passed inches from them. The two coughed from the risen cloud of dirt. Yuriko covered Izuka's eyes so no dust got in them. The dust began to settle, allowing the teen to raise her head. She noticed the girl with Naruto on the ground near them, getting up. Looking around, she frowned in worry when she didn't see said blonde. Getting up slowly, she looked around for any sign of him. "Naruto?" she called. Just then she heard the sound of coughing. Following the direction it was coming from, she saw it was coming from the still thick dust wall. Squinting her eyes, she tried to look through it. After a moment, the cloud lessened enough to let her gaze through. Naruto coughed as he stood up to his feet. He pulled his shirt collar up to cover his mouth as he turned his head to where he heard Yuriko's voice. Looking through the dispersing cloud, he narrowed his eyes to be able to see through it. Eventually, the cloud dispersed enough to allow him to spot his foster/adopted sister, with Izuka in her arms. A bit off to the side, he saw Tsukuyomi was with them, making him sigh in relief at all three girls being safe. The dust finally cleared, and Naruto's eyes widened when he saw the large, deep gash in the ground between him and the girls. He gulped nervously, if that had hit them. "So, you managed to dodge my attack, huh?" The purple and black monster muttered, before scoffing. "No matter. There is nothing you pathetic humans can do to stop the great Shibuya Seda." Swiping his arm forward, he ordered his henchmen. "Get them." SHT. Naruto could only curse as the combat men charged their way. "We need to get going," he told the others. No one argued as they turned on their heels and ran off as fast as they could, Tsukuyomi in the rear to provide support as she fired at the shocker agents. Shibuya Seda laughed as he watched the humans run. "It matters not. We still have the captives. With them, Shocker's plans will come to fruition." With silent steps, Minato cautiously moved through the seemingly empty section of the plaza, keeping his body low and against the side of a building, hidden in an alleyway. With him, was a group of 5 armed men and women. Their primary mission was the safe rescue of the captured civilians. Their second, optional directive, was the possible extermination of the unknown monster. Personally, Minato would like to avoid a confrontation with said monster. Even though Japan's weaponry and technology has developed far compared to the rest of the world through study and attempted replication of Kamen Rider and Super Sentai weapons, it wouldn't make Minato so confident that they would work against this monster, especially without testing. If it had the chance of putting his team in danger or any of the captives, he would like to prevent a fight. Meaning, they would have to try and not get seen by either the creature or the armed men. Suddenly, everyone both heard and felt several explosions, the ground quaking under them, forcing them to hold themselves using the wall. "What the hell? The F's going on? Everyone calm down," Minato ordered, gripping the wall to keep standing. After a moment, the shaking stopped, making everyone sigh in relief. "What was that?" one of the men asked, gripping his rifle. "It didn't sound close, that's something positive." "The monster maybe?" a woman suggested. "Maybe. Still, we should be on our toes for anything," Minato ordered, getting nods. With that, Minato inched closer to the edge of the building they were using for cover. Nudging just slightly around the corner, he looked around. The street was seemingly devoid of any sign of life, but one could never be too sure. According to aerial surveillance, the captives are being held up in a mini-mart several blocks from here. "Then let's go get them, sir." Minato looked back. "Keep your nerves calm. Who knows what surprises are hiding behind every corner. Let's move forward, but stay on your toes and watch each other's backs." The group nodded, and slowly they moved around the corner. Slowly, they walked through the empty street, glancing around cautiously. "I don't like this. It's too quiet," a man muttered. "SHT. Seriously?" a woman cursed, glaring at him, making him blink. Before he could say anything, shocker combat men appeared on the road ahead of them, guns aimed at them. "Look alive," Minato ordered, glaring at the henchmen. "Ah!" With a frightful scream and an unconscious Naru on her back, Usage ran to cover as fast as she could, Luna following her as Sailor Pluto held the mind-controlled women back with her staff. All the while, Morga laughed. "It is foolish to persist, human. Admit defeat now and relinquish your lives to the Dark Kingdom." "Silence, fiend!" Pluto shouted at her, glaring at the demonic creature. Lifting up a leg, she kicked the controlled woman in front of her in the chst, pushing her back into the other women behind her, causing them to fall to the ground in a pile. Taking a glance towards where Usagi was, she nodded when she spotted the tip of her hair buns peeking from behind a display shelf. Good. At least she will be out of danger at the moment, she thought, before turning her attention back on Morga. As the controlled women started to get up, she leaped into the air at her. Seeing the incoming senshi, Morga raised her arm at her, a sphere of dark energy appearing in her hand. With a dark smirk, she launched the sphere at Setsuna. Twirling her staff, Setsuna held it up in the air before slashing it down, hitting the sphere, destroying it. Aiming her staff, she retaliated with launching her own energy sphere. Obviously not willing to get hit, Morga jumped out of the way. However, that was exactly what Setsuna wanted. The sphere on her staff began to glow brightly. Reeling her staff back, she slashed it forward in a horizontal slash. From it, a green energy crescent fired off at the airborne enemy. It shot through the air, striking Morga, making her cry out in pain. The impact caused a small explosion. Arg! Morga shouted as she was pushed back to the ground. Quickly correcting herself before she hit the floor, she flipped and landed on her feet. Gritting her teeth, she glared at Pluto, who also landed, before charging at Morga. Raising her hand, Morga's nails grew and sharpened. With the sound of metal hitting metal, Setsuna's staff collided with Morga's nails. Foolish human. Morga growled, her demonic red eyes glowing in her anger. You dare resist against the Dark Kingdom? I will do whatever it takes to protect the innocent, vile beast. Pluto stated, attempting to push away the strong creature. Ha! Don't make me laugh. As if some pathetic mortal could possibly stand against a Yuma. You will pay for your insolence. Morga declared, breaking the hold by pushing her arms apart, making Pluto stagger back a bit in surprise. Taking the chance, Morga slashed her deadly claws at her. It was thanks to Pluto's quick reaction that saved her life as she jumped back. I'm not through with you yet. Morga shouted as her claws began to glow. Take this. With a slash of her claws, Morga sent 5 energy slashes out at Pluto, forcing her to dodge them. It didn't stop there, as Morga continued to slash, again and again, launching a barrage of energy slashes. Pluto gritted her teeth as she was forced to move faster to evade the energy attacks. The attacks she dodged hit the floor, walls, pillars and display cases, causing explosions. Ah! Usagi screamed as she dropped to the ground, covering her head while also making sure to shield Naru. On the high-floor balcony, the hidden Kamen Tuxedo cursed as he jumped away as an energy crescent hit where he once stood. This is insane. Those two are going to bring the whole building down. Seeing the damage being done to the room, Pluto cursed her recklessness. I need to end this fast. Turning back to the Yuma, she aimed her staff, the orb glowing, ready to fire. However, before she could, a group of controlled women suddenly appeared in front of Morga, making Pluto widen her eyes and immediately cancel her attack. Morga laughed darkly. What's the matter, hero? Can't bear to hurt these humans. Ha ha ha. Pluto gritted her teeth, glaring at the Yuma. You coward. Ah. Hearing Usagi's scream, Pluto span around, and saw Usagi being grabbed by several of the women. Let me go. Pluto gripped her staff in rising anger. Damn it. This is not good. Get back, you assholes. Naruto shouted, kicking a combat man away from him and his sisters. Glaring at the other one near them, he saw them actually charge towards them. No, you don't. He stated, charging as well. The shocker soldier threw a punch, yet Naruto evaded as he dropped down, sliding under the arm and getting behind the man. Turning around, Naruto kicked the man on the back of his knee, dropping him down. Grabbing the back of his head, Naruto pushed and slammed him face first into the concrete road, knocking him out. The instincts he gained from his years of attending karate competitions warned him of an incoming attack. Ducking, he dodged a sneak attack from behind, a fist sailing over his head. Throwing his elbow back, he slammed it into the man's chin, getting a pained grunt. Spinning around, he grabbed them by the front of their suit. Turning on his heel, he threw the man over his shoulder and into a small group of combat men attempting to get near Azuka and Yuriko. Moving in front of them, Naruto glared at the remaining shocker combat men as they moved in closer towards the siblings. As Naruto was guarding his sisters, Tsukimi was using her Phase Phone X blaster to shoot the armed combat men in Shibuya Seda. With precise aim, she was able to shoot the men's hands. Not really damaging them severely, but forcing them to drop their weapons. However, when she attempted to shoot the monster, the shots had little to no damage, merely erupting in small sparks against his body. Shibuya laughed. Pathetic, human. Your weapon is useless against me. He gloated, raising his sword, which began to spark with power. Frowning, Tsukimi kept shooting at him, in vain attempt to inflict damage. Naruto! She called as she stepped back. Punching another shocker drone away, Naruto turned her way, his eyes widening when he saw the charging attack. Turning, he grabbed Yuriko's shoulders before he and Tsukimi leaped out of the way just as Shibuya slashed his blade down, launching an energy crescent wave. It sailed through the air, missing the teens and child by a hair length, and soared through the space of the empty street until it collided with a building. Thankfully, the building was empty, as with a massive explosion, it was completely destroyed. Raising his head from the ground, Naruto gazed at the ruins of the destroyed building and gritted his teeth. We need to get out of here, Databayo. Get to cover. Minato shouted, quickly jumped into the alleyway beside him with one of his men. The rest followed the order immediately as they got behind their own coverings, as the shocker combat men fired upon them with their weapons. One or two of the enemies fired with pistols or assault rifles, while the rest wielded blasters. Small explosions erupted where the bolts of deadly energy struck around the hiding police force. With his back to the wall, Minato patiently waited for the right time to shoot back. As he waited, he wondered who these guys were. Are they some kind of terrorist group? Those outfits, they resemble the outfits the henchmen from the Shocker organization wore, but different. The enemy wore black clothing, consisting of baggy black pants, long-sleeve sturdy jackets with a white skeletal ribcage design on the front, black gloves, black boots, and finally full-head black masks with what looked like jet pilot air breather masks and large round black lens goggles. I thought they were finally destroyed by the Kamen Riders. Is this another incarnation? Japan had many terrorist organizations throughout the years, with the deadliest being Shocker and Black Cross Army, among others. Thank Kami for actual heroes being real. I never want to imagine what life would be like under their rule. He thought, shaking his head. Focusing his attention back at the situation at hand, Minato looked at the man with him. Raising a hand, he gestured for him to wait for the right time, getting a nod on understanding. Turning to the others of his squad in view, he gave them the same gesture, getting nods in return. After what felt like forever, the assault finally came to a short pause as the combat men halted their attack. Taking the opportunity, Minato gave everyone a nod, before they all peeked out from their covers and fired back. This time, the combat men were forced to seek cover. The game of targets continued going back and forth for a while with only minimal casualties. It was thanks to their armor, it was improved far from regular Kevlar, being stronger and much more durable. However, while strong against regular bullets, it still suffered damage from energy bolts. As one of his injured men was being dragged away for safety, Minato narrowed his eyes as he aimed carefully, before shooting a combat man, before focusing on the others. Unfortunately, when it seemed his side was on the verge of victory over the enemy, their luck appeared to run out as more combatmen began appearing, SHT. Cursing the rotten luck, Minato dove back under cover to escape the run of bullets. We're being pinned down. One of the police women exclaimed. Minato frowned before his eyes lowered to the case resting at his feet. Silently, he knelt down, laying the case. One of the men saw this. Are you certain, Minato-senpai? He asked. As far as I see it, there is no other choice. We're outnumbered, far more than we thought, and that's not even counting the monster, which we are lucky it hasn't shown up yet. I have to try this. Without proper testing. Minato gave them a soft smile. If it means you all survive to make it back home safe, then yes. He stated firmly and confidently, before turning his attention back on the case, hands on the front levels, ready to unlock it. Rabbit. Tank. Best match. The sudden sound that appeared out of nowhere caught everyone's attention and stopped Minato from opening the case. The JPD force looked around for the source of the sound. Suddenly, a figure dropped down from above, landing in the middle of the street road in view of the police. Everyone blinked, staring at the figure. Whoever they wore red and blue armor with a small amount of black around the waist and right leg, which had mostly blue armor, while the left had red, along with metal spiral rings. On the helmet, they had different colored eye lenses, the left being red and right being blue, both with extended edges resembling antennas. Hagain no Moonsault of steel. Rabbit tank. Yeah. Minato and his group blinked at the new arrival. Who's that? Someone asked. No one had an answer. A Kamen rider? Never seen one like this before. A new one, maybe. Minato was silent, staring at the red/blue stranger. The rider muttered, staring at the combat men as they gathered themselves. So, this is the cause of the disturbance. Those guys seem to be wearing a type of uniform. Though the news report said something about a monster, I would have thought there wouldn't be any smash in this world, but if what I learned on the internet is correct, this world has its own brand of threats. Curious. Look out. Minato warned as he saw the combat men getting ready to fire at the rider. Snapping out of his thoughts, the rider focused back on the task at hand. Ah. I don't think so. Turning his head to the side, he spotted an empty abandoned vehicle on the side of the road. Pulling his left leg back, he gave the vehicle a mighty kick. Mighty was right, as the car sailed through the air as if it was a soccer ball. It sailed towards the shocker force, making them dive out of the way as it crashed onto their former position with a great slam. Quickly, they got back up and fired at the rider. Unfortunately for them, the normal bullets simply bounced off the armor. DMN. Their weapons aren't doing anything. Who is this guy? One of the cops wondered. The rider heard them, and without a round, gave them a V-sign greeting. Name's Kamen Rider Build. Don't worry, I'll handle this. He told them, before focusing back on the shocker combat men. Crouching low, he leaped into the air, sailing high above the gathered viewers. Drill Crusher. From the belt on his waist, what looked like blue and red tubes crawled out. In a flash of light, a drill-like object appeared. Grabbing it, Build detached the drill part and attached the other end to another section of the black base grip. Gun mode. Aiming the weapon down on the shocker combat men, Build fired energy bolts down on them, making their area erupt in showers of sparks and smoke, dazing them. Landing in the middle of the group, he began kicking and punching, as well as changing to slashing with the drill crusher, blade mode. Minato, seeing Build putting the enemy's attention on him, turned to his group. Come on. He's distracting them. Let's get back to saving those civilians. He ordered, getting nods, and carefully and quietly, they snuck past the battling group, heading to their primary destination, while Minato mentally thanked the stranger for his assistance. Seeing the JPD moving away, Build nodded before looking at the combat men. Now, let's begin the experiment. He exclaimed, sliding a finger over his side antenna. With a quick roll, Naruto narrowingly dodged out of the way of a stab, the sword's blade sinking into the concrete road where his CHST formerly rested above. Quickly getting up, he threw a kick at Shibuya. Unfortunately, it was like kicking a wall, the monster not even budging. However, not giving up, Naruto pushed the ground with his other leg, lifting him up into the air and using his free leg, threw a sidekick at Shibuya's head. To his horror, his leg was caught, before he was uncaringly tossed away like nothing. Rolling across the ground, Naruto ended on his front, glaring up at the monster as he got up. Laughing, the shocker monster extracted his weapon from the ground, resting it on his shoulder as he turned to the blonde. "Foolish boy. As if you could hurt me. I'm the great Shibuya Seda of Shocker. You might as well be fighting a mountain." He slashed at the blonde, who barely managed to lean back, though suffered a light cut across his chest, one of several injuries he sustained while trying to survive the monster's attacks. Taking a glance out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Tsukimi shooting at the black attire-wearing men as she guarded his sisters. Focusing back on Shibuya, he ducked under another sword slash, all the while he gritted his teeth in anger. Any time he tried to lead his sisters and Tsukimi way to safety, they would be stopped by more of those henchmen appearing and blocking their path. Now, they were at the mercy of these assholes. Ha ha ha. How long do you think you can last, human? Shibuya mocked, laughing as Naruto rolled out of the way of another slash. Do try and last long enough. This is the most fun I've had in a long time. Shibuya stated, before slashing once more, this time charging energy into his sword. While Naruto was lucky enough to get out of the way of the slash in time, the explosion of energy from the blade making contact with the road sent him flying back. Namikaze, /Naruto, /Oni-chan. The girls shouted, seeing what occurred. Hitting the ground, Naruto gritted his teeth, groaning. He cursed his situation. He cursed his idiocy. He had foolishly thought that just because he had some experience in fighting from his years in karate training, he would have a chance against this monster. I'm such an idiot. He thought, before getting back up, panting as blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. But I can't give up, I just can't. He thought determinedly, glancing at his worried sisters, Azuka whimpering in fright and worry for her big brother. Gritting his teeth, he glared at Shibuya, actually surprising the monster from the fire in his eyes. Oh. Still have some fire in you, huh? He asked, chuckling. Shaking his head, Shibuya lifted his blade up at the ready. I think it's time we end this game. Die, human. He stated, charging at Naruto. Naruto. Yuriko shouted. Move out of the way. Tsukimi shouted at him. Onie-chan. Azuka cried. I won't give up. Naruto thought, watching as Shibuya ran towards him, though seemingly everything moved in slow motion. I won't back down. Not when Azuka and Yuriko need me. Naruto. Tsukimi called towards him. No matter how much my body hurts, or my legs shake, I won't back down. Oh. You want to become king, Naru-chan? An elderly woman asked, smiling down at a young whisker-faced boy with spiky sun-kissed blonde hair. Hi. The boy nodded rapidly at her. I want to be like the guys in your stories, Ba-chan. The ones who were the bosses of samurai and big land. Oh. You mean a shogun? Or daimyo? She asked, giggling lightly when Naruto made an adorable confused expression. Yeah. One of those. They are the bosses of samurai, right? That means that they are really strong. You said your Gigi was one, right? He asked. Mito nodded softly. My great-grandfather, yes. A long time ago. Back when our family was once a clan. The Uzumaki clan. In fact, your great-great-grandfather was good friends with Oda Nobunaga. Really? Naruto asked, eyes wide with awe. Chuckling, Mito nodded. Yes, he was a strong samurai, your ancestor. Fierce, strong, and loyal, and you want to be like him, don't you, Naru-chan? Naruto nodded. Smiling at her great-grandson, the woman, who while appearing to be in her 70s but actually well in her early 100s, gently ran a hand through his hair. Well, that's a big dream, Naru-chan, but I think you can do it. She said. You do? Naruto asked, looking at her surprised, before frowning softly, lowering his head. The other kids in school always laugh when I told them, saying it was stupid. He muttered sadly. Gently cupping his chin, Mito raised his head to look at her, still keeping her smile. Naru-chan, you shouldn't let what other people say bother you. If dreams were always easy, people wouldn't grow and learn the lessons they need in life to survive. To be a king, you need to be strong. You must learn to stand up to those that will try to push you down and give up on your dream. You can't let them. Always remember, to be a king, you need to be a man, and to be a man, it means being able to get back up every time you fall down. Being a king means being strong, but also kind. You can't let others push you around, but you also can't be mean to them either. You must be kind and gentle. A king leads by example and gathers followers who trust in you when needed. Always remember, kindness, bravery, loyalty, and determination. A person needs all of that to be a leader, more to be a king. Naruto blinked at her, head tilting to the side. His young mind had some trouble fully understanding his great-grandmother's words, but either way, he nodded, smiling. Okay, Oba-chan. Kindness, bravery, loyalty, and determination, I need to be strong. For Izuka-chan. For Yuriko-chan. I can't back down. Naruto mentally shouted, holding his ground as Shibuya got within range, raising his sword into the air. Naruto tensed, getting ready to either dodge or counter as the blade dropped, ignoring the calls of his name. Namikaze. Naruto. Onie-chan. I won't back down. He mentally shouted. Unknown to him, a glow appeared in his pocket. Naruto's eyes widened, as the sword was stopped, a hand gripping the blade without a problem. Following the arm, he blinked at who the person was. You. Tsukuyomi gasped. Was smiled at the blonde, as if he wasn't holding a sharp sword back with just his hand. We meet again, Mao-sama. He greeted, before looking at Shibuya with a frown, glaring. You dare attempt to lay a hand on my lord? Learn your place, mongrel. He hissed, kicking the monster. To Naruto's surprise, the strike sent the monster back a good distance. Turning back to the blonde, was knelt before him. My lord, I don't believe I've introduced myself. I am your faithful servant, Was. Servant? Naruto asked, blinking. Was nodded, smiling. Indeed. I have watched you for some time. You truly show the makings of a king, my lord. What you lack. Watching as Was reached behind him, Naruto blinked when from his back, Was suddenly brought out a fancy-looking, red velvet cushion. Where in the world did that come from? He questioned, having no clue on how that was possible. Was presented the cushion to him, and Naruto noticed there was something resting on it. It looked like a device, though nothing he's seen before. It looked like a belt buckle given the straps on the sides and of high-tech design. On the left front side was a blank plate, with slots in the middle and right, a button on top, and what looked like a lever placed behind the right slot port. Are the tools of a king. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Juubi no Shinju on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.